everybody for coming. This is our dean, Leora Gutkian. She's going to introduce.
You can hear me? Yes. There we go. Awesome. All righty. So, hello and welcome, whether you are here in the room or via live stream to California State University San Marcos. My name is Leora Gutkian. I'm Dean of the College of Humanities, Arts, Behavioral, and Social Sciences. And today I have the great pleasure of introducing our panelists for this session titled How Arts, Empathy, and Mindfulness Inform Cybersecurity Challenges. Now, those of you who have gotten to see the setup know that there are many exciting things about this day, including the impressive multidisciplinary expertise of the people you are about to meet. But what most impresses me about the learning opportunity before us is the recognition that complex technical challenges aren't just tech challenges, right? We are completely imploding that notion here. We have to work across the disciplines that often separate our knowledge spaces to successfully confront the challenges we face. And that regardless of the particularity of the problem, a mindset that accesses our creativity and foregrounds our empathy is essential. So let me introduce these fantastic folks who are currently at the front of the room and will be joining us shortly. We have Jen Easterly. She is the director of the, and I'm only going to say the full thing once, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CSUSM. She's a proud mom, a mental health advocate, a Rubik's Cube enthusiast, and an inspiring electric.
Both.
I like that. Guitarist.
Why not?
Why not? So before joining, and was it CSUSM or CISA?
CSUSM.
CISA, it is. Okay, CISA. Jen led the firm-wide resilience effort at Morgan Stanley after a lengthy public service career that included serving at the White House twice, helping to stand up the Army's first cyber battalion, and more than 20 years of service in intelligence and cyber operations, including tours of duty in Haiti, the Balkans, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Lisa Einstein serves as Executive Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. Okay, I said it twice.
Yeah, you did.
A group of experts that advises CISA's director on ways to reduce cyber risk to critical infrastructure. She was Stanford's first dual master's degree recipient in computer science and international cyber policy. While at Stanford, she led H.R. McMaster's research team on emerging technologies and geopolitics, contributed to a forthcoming book on trust and safety engineering, and conducted research on AI-augmented education and algorithmic decision support tools for humanitarian evacuations. Dr. Ranjita Basu, there she is our third panelist. She completed her bachelor's and master's degrees in economics at the University of Bombay. After completing her PhD in economics from University of California, Riverside, she joined the economics department at California State University San Marcos in 1994. And over the last 29 years, she has done research and taught courses in many different areas of economics, including international, gender and development, economics of well-being, and econometrics. She's also been administrator here in several positions: department chair, associate dean, interim provost, and interim chief diversity officer. She is currently a professor of economics and director of the Center for Contemplative Practices here at CSUSM. She's a trained mindfulness teacher and practitioner, and facilitates faculty learning communities, workshops, and trainings for the CSUSM campus community and beyond. and she is currently researching the impact of mindfulness practices and stress levels of students in NIH-funded programs. We're not done yet. It's actually just printed big because I'm getting old eyes. Lucy H.G. Solomon, also in the front row here, is an associate professor of art, media, and design at CSUSM. She is a faculty fellow of innovation and a faculty fellow of STEAM ingenuity at Center Artes. With the Planet Mentorship Project, she guides students as they develop data visualizations about issues they care about. She's a Fulbright scholar and an internationally exhibiting artist. Cesar and Lois, her art collective with Brazilian artist Cesar Baio, creates artworks that cross technology with natural systems. Cesar and Lois won the Lumen Prize in Artificial Intelligence in 2018 and are current artists in residence at the Beale Center for Art and Technology at UC Irvine and with the More the Planet project in Finland. And then as a respondent to this august panel, we have my colleague, Dr. Jackie Trishman, also here in the front row. She is the Dean of the College of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. She taught chemistry on the CSUSM campus for 25 years before becoming Dean, where she taught marine science, organic and instrumental, thank you, chemistry, and developed a course on a topic near and dear to her heart, the chemistry of chocolate. And then our wonderful convener and moderator for this panel, Dr. Meryl Goldberg. She is a professor of music here at CSUSM and director of the Art Equals Opportunity, a research-based initiative providing arts education and integration workshops and advocacy tools for educators, parents, youth, and teens, and art providers. A professional musician herself, Goldberg knows firsthand the powerful role arts play in students' ability to excel in education, attain better jobs, and become empathetic citizens. Originally from Boston, Goldberg's undergraduate degree is from New England Conservatory of Music, and her master's and doctorate is from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And saying this only because she wrote it, go Red Sox.
Sorry, Joe.
And with that,
Thanks so much, Leora. All right, let's get this party rolling here. So is cybersecurity, empathy, arts, creativity, you know, it doesn't sound like it should go together, but it goes together really well, and hopefully you'll leave understanding how well this all fits. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a performance first, a little performance. Lisa and Jen are going to sing a tune. I'll let you set it up. Then we're going to bring up Lucy and Ranjita. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, how these things all mesh. And then at the end, after we talk, Jackie's going to have a couple of remarks, like what it all means for us here. And then we're going to close with 3 tunes. So this is a super special event and like so much fun. All right, let's get it going. Lisa, you want to give us the intro to this song?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Everyone's good? Okay. Hi, everyone. I met a bunch of you in the previous Learning Through the Arts class. That was awesome. Thanks for being so great. Can people raise their hand if they are a science major? Okay, cool. So just a few in here. So I studied physics in my undergraduate program and dance, so for the artists in here, I see you also, I feel you. And after university, I served in the Peace Corps. Does anyone know anyone who served in the Peace Corps? Okay, awesome. So I served in the Peace Corps in Guinea in West Africa. It was the best experience of my life. I'm actually going there again on Saturday, which is hard to believe. But when I was serving in the Peace Corps, I taught physics to about 600 students, including about 100 girls. And I was sitting next to my host sister one day, hanging out, and I asked her, hey, what do you think you might study if you go to university, when you go to university, do you think you might want to study physics? And her brother interrupted, who was also sitting there, and he said, oh, no, girls can't do math and science. They're not good at it. This is a real story. It's true. And he continued. He said, girls are lazy. Math is hard. There's a lot of numbers. And so I did what anyone would do in this situation. And I went back to my room and I wrote him a rap. And when I brought it to him, and it really was just my way, as Meryl said, of integrating the information I had. I honestly felt pretty dumb after college because physics is hard. And I was like, I don't know if I can do science, but I know people who can do science. I know girls who can do science. So I'm going to write him. I'm going to put this all together. And I brought it to him and he was super into it. And he was like, you should make a chorus. We should film this. We can record it together. So we ended up doing that. And I'm going to just play you that song here. So just as a reminder, and I'm going to ask for your help at the end too. So I need you to be engaged. So we were just sitting there and he said, girls can't do math and science. They're not good at it. And I said, anytime a person talks in such broad generalities, I go to skeptic. Now let me bring you to reality. If only I could think of female physicist examples. Here you go, Mr. Scientist. I'm handing you your sample because I studied fucking physics and I finished my degree. Not just in a high school, but in university. In fact, I swung through town to teach your girls and oh, your boys for free. The president told me there's a need here. If you want, though, I can leave here. Mr. General, here we go. In general, ain't our beliefs that make it so? Perhaps you mean no malice, but it's fallacy, my bro. The last in the math class I've seen enough to know. I believe in me. I know my power. I know my dreams. I know my strength. And it runs deep. Your doubts will never conquer me. Girls can't do math and girls can't do science. Here I showed up with the 17 with Nobel Prizes. Wait, it's 16. Marie Curie's like, that first one was nice. I think I'll win twice. Or look at Sally Ride as she flied up into space. A bona fide bride, progressive human race. I'll put it in your language, not physique is feminine. So take that back to your friends and brethren. I believe in me. I know my power. I know my dreams. I know my strength. And it runs deep. Your doubts will never conquer me. Look, hustler, my brother, admit it. You got perks because if your power is equal to the rate at which you work and know first do the cooking and the cleaning and the shining. Where's the time for work? We're just hanging your laundry line. Seriously, time is she's assigned chores while you do your assignments. Of course, the time for month's gonna fall behind. It's called a bias. The point is undermined till your controls are well defined. Perhaps you'd like a lesson in experiment design. I believe in me. I know my power. I know my dreams. I know my strength. And it runs deep. Your doubts will never conquer me. My friend, I must confess that I'm distressed by how you stress the sex with lesson. Any lesson that a teacher's trying to spread. Now, don't you think that your expression just might get up in her head? Your assessment might suppress her from a gift that she possessed. Now, take a guess. I'll let you in on something not so secret. Because in the U.S., we got some issues that might hit you deeper. If you were taking math in an American classroom, you'd be getting doubted like the girls in the class too. Yep, because you're black too. It's a load of crap too. So yeah, I think your sister could kick ass in my class too. I believe in me. I know my power. I know my dreams. I know my strength. And it runs deep. Your doubts will never conquer me. I need your help now. You're gonna say, is that a sun on the horizon? It's just a girl rising. Is that a sun on the horizon? Keep going. It's just a girl rising. Is that a sun? Louder! I need you to really keep the rhythm. Keep the rhythm. You got this. Keep going. I believe in me. I know my power. I know my dreams. I know my strength. And it runs deep.
just so cool. Thank you so much. And I was going to ask why. I know that you've played this at other venues too, and so what are you thinking about when you start with a tune like this?
Well, I think one of the core tenets of the arts is to show and not tell. So it's good to dive in.
Jen, how about you?
Well, I was at a party of a friend of mine, actually somebody on my advisory board, and all of a sudden Lisa and her now husband, then boyfriend, showed up, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" She's like, "Oh, Nilu asked us to play a tune." I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And they played it, and I was just blown away by the story as much as the actual music. And so, we played it in a bunch of different places, but I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I thought we would get like a little, what I call a background check, and let Ranjita, let all of you talk a little bit about your background and kind of what led you here. And then we're going to get into imagination and empathy and all that. So let's start with Ranjita.
So I grew up in India, in Mumbai, and came here for graduate school to study economics. And along the way, found mindfulness, which in some ways kind of took me full circle, and realized that that's really what I was passionate about, and being able to bring that to our campus community, being able to integrate that into our pedagogy, into our research, and really empower students to be able to have this approach, to be in the present moment, to be able to fully embrace whatever this moment is bringing without fear, and being able to be creative, be innovative, but most importantly, be compassionate.
And you have a background in dance.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I did dance for since I was 7 years old till I was 22. And when I decided to come to the United States, I really kind of had to choose between, like, was I going to be a professional dancer or economics? And I chose economics at the time. But I think the dancer is always in me. Thank you. I forgot that.
Lucy.
I'm Lucy, and my background is primarily in art, although I began as an undergraduate student as a biology major. And as an artist, I ended up making my goal really thinking about and working with science in untraditional ways and trying to find ways to dive into research that's sometimes incomprehensible, seemingly incomprehensible. So I do a lot of data visualization. And in fact, my data visualization class is here now, and that's me.
And what is data visualization?
Who can answer that in the class? So data visualization for artists can be a translation of information into any medium. And so earlier, when you were demonstrating how AI works through dance, that it really was a very experiential, effective way of data visualization.
Thanks. And Jen, how did you get here?
Well, that's a long story. So I grew up in Maryland. My mom was an English professor. My dad was a speechwriter. My mom taught a lot of poetry, so I grew up sort of with the arts. I was the arts editor of my high school newspaper. Yeah, you didn't know that. Fun fact. And I did what any, art-loving high school student would do. I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point to be an Army officer. And I was in the Army for about 21 years. Did intelligence, did cyber operations, did a lot of time downrange in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then slowly made my way into the private sector and here to CSUSM. And just to be clear, so CSUSM is the newest agency in the federal government. We were stood up just over 5 years ago to be America's cyber defense agency. So we're responsible for the cybersecurity of the nation. And one would think that we would be just an agency of hackers and coders, and we do have a lot of them. But we also have a bunch of folks who do all kinds of other things that help to enable our mission. And I've always thought that in this particular mission, because technology is not about computers, technology is about people, it's just as important to have the hard skills, the technical skills, as it is to have the human skills. And so I've always loved this combination of art and science. And when Lisa came to work at CSUSM, you know, I discovered a kindred spirit in somebody who has an appreciation for that. And so it's helped to advance a lot of what our messaging is around the importance of art and science and human skills and empathy. So, and should I tell the story about how we ended up
Sure.
meeting each other? So there's this big hacker, well, it's a big vendor conference actually in San Francisco called RSA. And I was doing a keynote there, and they have this green room where you put speakers, and I was meeting with the rest of the folks I was on the panel on, and there's Meryl, like with a bunch of sheet music. I was like, what are you doing here? And, you know, as it turned out, she was telling this amazing story about how she used sheet music to encode hidden messages of the refuseniks in the Soviet Union who weren't able to leave, the Jews there, and was chased around by the KGB and finally was able to escape, bringing the messages out in code. And I just thought, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And so I made a point to follow up with you. You came to visit CSUSM. Played some music together, which was super fun, and then here we are. So thank you for having us here.
Oh, I am thrilled. And I'm glad that it was serendipity that we were backstage together. That was just too cool. Lisa.
Awesome. I'll drip in some high points, and then probably more story will come out later. But I was born in the US, but then grew up in Canada, in Toronto. And I went to an incredible performing arts school from grade 4 through 9, where we went from music class to math class to dance class, and all of our learning was kind of integrated with learning through the arts, kind of like your class, Meryl. And so I caught the bug, or maybe the disease, I don't know, of just learning through all these creative methods. And so all of the traditional learning environments that I went into after that, I brought that with me just as my core who I was. So I ended up going to Princeton to study physics, but for my senior thesis, I created a dance theater piece to teach foundations of quantum mechanics and tested its effectiveness against traditional methods. While I was at Princeton, I had the opportunity to meet an incredible woman named Camille A. Brown. Has anyone heard of Camille Brown, dancer? Okay, anyway, incredible dancer. She ended up hiring me for her company, so I ended up dancing professionally for a couple of years. Then joined the Peace Corps. I was teaching this environment where I had to use all these things because I was teaching physics, but there was no electricity, running water, materials for teaching physics. So we would get up and move around and try to embody different experiments and things like that when we were learning about electricity, for example. I ended up going to graduate school to learn more about how I could really use all these skill sets to impact the world. And as you already mentioned, my graduate programs that I did, I studied AI and international cyber policy. And then really cared about finding a place to land after graduate school where I could really have an impact on a really big problem in the world, a really big challenge, and also work with a very inspiring leader, which I found in Jen. So as soon as I met her, I was like, well, I'm not going anywhere else. So, so we've had a wonderful time working together over the last little over a year.
That is really great. So When I first was introduced to cybersecurity, when people were interested in my story, I was thinking, what the heck? You know, I couldn't figure out a way that this mattered at all in cybersecurity, the arts or what I did. And I was kind of fascinated that people were interested. And then I started, when Jen asked to meet with me, and I remember that when we first met on Zoom, you know, after our initial meeting, and you had a lollipop, and I thought, oh, this person's pretty cool. And to do my background, you know, I thought I better know something about cybersecurity before talking to the director of the whole thing, right? I was shocked that imagination, empathy, thinking outside the box, like all the things we do in the arts are the core. And you can read on the CSUSM, on your guiding principles, all of these things that Jen had written, and I was just fascinated. I went, okay, it does matter. I can see these connections now. So we're going to explore them a little bit. And I decided on 4 broad themes. I hope we'll get to all of them. And these are directly from the CSUS's workforce culture writing. And it highlights the importance of imagination, empathy, honest feedback, and communication. These are core values. There are other core values as well. Jen, I'll start with you. You wrote that imagination is the magic that fuels our ability to solve our most complex problems, that drives our spirit of innovation, that generates big ideas, and that it's critical to lead with empathy. So I thought, since you wrote it, let's have you say just a little bit about that again, because I think most people, or it could be my ignorance, don't automatically connect cybersecurity and empathy even, right?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little first about imagination, give you a little background there, and then we can talk about empathy. How many folks were born before 9/11? Okay. So, you know, I was in uniform in the military. It was a significant thing for us. I was actually teaching at West Point. I was teaching economics and national security. And, you know, when it occurred, it was a time where it looked like the U.S. military was going to draw down significantly, and that a lot of the cadets would be graduating into a world where it would just be going to do field exercises, and then, you know, they wouldn't be serving in combat or in a war or anything like that. And then after 9/11, things just changed completely because the cadets knew that they'd be graduating into a world where they would likely be serving in combat to defend their nation. And shortly after I left West Point, I went to go work at the White House for Condoleezza Rice, who was the national security advisor at the time. I was a young U.S. Army major. And I was there from 2002 to 2004, which, if you know the history of it, was a pretty turbulent time. It was a fascinating education for me as a young officer in terms of how national security works, geopolitics. The last thing I did before I left the White House was I went to the 9/11 Commission hearings where Dr. Rice had to testify. And I remember very vividly, she was up in the stand, and there was the commissioners sort of up on a dais, and I was behind her with the other sort of key advisors. And I remember the words of the co-chairman of the 9/11 Commission. It was a guy named Tom Kean, who was the former governor of New Jersey, and he said, you know, on that day, we were unprepared. We had not grasped the magnitude of a threat that had been growing for a considerable amount of time. It was a failure of policy, a failure of capability, a failure of management, but above all, a failure of imagination. And that phrase kind of struck me like a lightning bolt, because you think about, particularly if you're in the business of security or if you're in the military, it really is your job to defend the nation. And in many ways, the government had failed, and it led to the deaths of nearly 3,000 people, and a lot of changes that have occurred for better and for worse, frankly, over the last 20 plus years. And so throughout the rest of my life, I've always focused on ensuring that I am honing my imagination and working with others that are able to think about both the awesome things that can occur, but also the worst case scenario so that we can be prepared for it. And so that's always something that I think about in cybersecurity, because we're dealing with a full range of very serious threats from nations like North Korea, and we're dealing with cyber criminals and ransomware actors, and we need to be able to prepare the American people for how they have to respond to it. So a lot of it is imagining the best, but also imagining the worst, being able to anticipate. And that will allow us to better be innovative about the approaches that we take from a technical perspective. So I think imagination is one of the most important things that we have in our lives. It's a gift that we can grow and hone and teach others. And so it's one of my obsessions, frankly. And empathy. I feel like I've been talking for too long. Do you want me to go in?
No, you can go into empathy.
Empathy. All right, I'll be shorter on this one. How many people would consider themselves an empathetic person? Cool. Like all of you raised your hands. Like at the end of the day, I think we all want to think of ourselves as empathetic people. But being truly empathetic is actually challenging. And it's more challenging in a world where everybody's walking around with what I like to call a weapon of mass distraction. Some of you are probably looking at your phones right now. I grew up in a world where we didn't have those devices. You know, they weren't introduced until 2007 by Steve Jobs in the Moscone Center in San Francisco. And I think in the world we live in today, particularly in a high-tech world, you know, I'm a cybersecurity person, we have to be very, very deliberate about focusing on not just our work, but on other people. I really believe that life is a contact sport, and the quality of our life is really rooted in the quality of our personal relationships. And so developing those connections with others, putting yourself in their shoes so that you can understand where they're coming from, so that you can know how to really make the most of their talents, their skills, based on their motivations, their background, that's become more and more rare these days. And frankly, in cybersecurity, it's incredibly important because cybersecurity is the team sport. We have to be a team to work together and collaborate to solve the hardest problems out there to defend the nation from the most malicious threat actors. And you can't do that unless you can build a great team by always putting yourself in the shoes of others. And it's also really important to have what I call adversarial empathy. So you have to understand how your adversary operates. You also have to put yourselves in the shoes of those hackers who want to break into your system so you can understand their motivations, their techniques, and so you can counter them as a defender. So it works both from a mission perspective as well as a team building perspective. And I just think it's incredibly important to anyone in this field, but just in general, to have those skills to be a great leader.
Lisa, would you like to piggyback on that?
Yes. I'll just pull, because Jen already so eloquently described her reaction to those particular terms. I'll say that something that you mentioned about communication, and there is no field in which communication is not important, but in cybersecurity and in these kind of like high stress national security jobs, being able to communicate effectively, clearly, get your point across is so critical. And I really notice when people have arts training, whether they are effective communicators. It doesn't mean you can't be if you don't have it. But I certainly draw on mine all the time when I'm giving presentations or thinking about how to most clearly write an email. And I think it is critical. There was a very interesting New York Times article about people right now in the U.S. government who have arts backgrounds and talking about where they came from and how it's influenced them. So I highly recommend that people check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of communication, so Lucy, that's a lot of what you do. And you know, the arts really do open that door for multiple ways of communication. So would you like to describe a little bit about how data visualization can help with communication?
Sure. Yes, I think we are, as a species, at a moment in our existence where we've surpassed 8 billion people, and the threat is not only adversaries, but ourselves in certain ways, and the impact we have on the environment. And yet, those distracting devices really do pull us away from the immediacy of many of the issues that we're part of, that we're intrinsically part of. As artists, and many of the students here are grappling with these issues and coming up with innovative ways to express those in an effort to make the world that is so intangible, because it's filled with all of these data sets. We were discussing earlier today in the exercises how many millions and billions of training periods an AI requires, and the various patterns and data sets that get fed into those systems. As humans, we can't really comprehend that. And yet we want to empathize, and we want to take it in, and we want to respond. And so data visualization and different kinds of art mechanisms give us this avenue of expressing in a way that causes us to respond emotionally and intellectually, but also to comprehend. So one example, we had a student who has graduated last year, Melissa Lugtu, who looked at 2 data sets given to us by a conservation research team. They were looking at threatened freshwater pearl mussels in Scandinavia and their prevalence, as well as all sorts of data around what the researchers observed: the depth of the river, how much greenery was in the river, where the different mussels were seen. What she did was created a musical composition, and so we'll get back to music, that had 2 instruments and ended up being a duet between the river and the mussel. And this data, it's tabular, many, many sheets. Even the researchers, whom we all, myself and my students, have come to know over the years of working with them, don't fully emotionally understand their data. But when they listen to this duet that Melissa plays, which is both with a flute and an ocarina, they can see the relationship between the amount of mussels and then the depth of the river. And that kind of experiential information, it changes something that is incomprehensible to something that you feel. So I think there's lots of different methods for doing that. It's not just music. With my own partner, Cesar Bayu, we're working in Finland, in the boreal forest, just on the border of Russia, with scientists who are helping us use electrodes to sense the signals of all sorts of species, from moss to trees to lichens, and they each have their own pulse. The system, the network of those electronic pulses is really complex. It's in response to one another in the forest, it's in response to the climate, but as we walk through the forest, we might have a sense that there's this beautiful system of communication happening around us. We can't see it, we don't understand it. Even when we look at the data of different electronic pulses, it's really not that interesting. So what we do as artists is we're transforming those sensing data into pulses of light. And you can walk through the forest and really experience the exact signaling, how the pine tree has a really slow signal that it's sending out, and the lichens also, but then the moss is just going crazy over there. And so there's this rich communication system that's totally foreign to us as humans. And there's so many different kinds of data sets out there that we don't have the sensory organs to perceive. And that's what data visualization lets us do, hopefully.
That's really cool. If anyone wants to respond to anything, I would love to have just a conversation. So if there's anything you want to chime in, just chime in.
I just thought that was really cool.
I know. I love the idea of walking through and having all the little light points and everything.
I'll just say that the fact that you're helping people engage with scientific concepts in ways that relate to them and engage them is just such a critical and brilliant thing to do to engage all the kinds of people we need in, for example, cybersecurity, to understand what Jen said about empathy of the adversary and empathy for an imagination for the ways that we could actually defend. Because in order to have that, we need all kinds of people. And people connect with concepts in different ways. So what you're doing is so critical to ensure that everyone sees a place for themselves in things like science, data, cybersecurity, et cetera.
The other thing it made me think of, so a friend of mine, I went to graduate school at Oxford, and one of my teammates, one of my classmates, was a guy called Roman Krznarek, who's written 2 books, which I just think are amazing. I highly recommend them. One is called Empathy, What It Is and How to Get It. And the other is called The Good Ancestor. And the books sort of connect in what he's talking about in terms of creating generational empathy, so that you can think about the world that you are leaving to your great-great-great-grandchildren, sort of 7 generations forward. And if you can really put yourself into that mindset, and he talks about different ways to do that, then you can appreciate so much more what we're doing for the environment or what we're not doing for the environment, right? And so it sort of made me connect those things in my mind as you were talking about that. So thank you.
That's a great segue, and Ranjita, I'm going to pass it over to you. First of all, if you have any comments for that, and well, let me give you an opportunity first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Where I'm leading with this is the notion of honest feedback. So one of the things that we do in the arts always is, so how many of you have taken a lesson in music or dance or theater, or been in a theater production in 4th grade? So one of the things that is that you practice, you get feedback from your teacher or from your peers, you go back and you practice more and you try to get better. And when you're a professional, like we are, you might be on a stage and there are critics and they give you feedback, and sometimes you like it and sometimes you don't, but it's something that that happens all the time. So we are trained in the arts to have feedback as a regular process of what we do. And it's interesting to me that honest feedback is also a tenet of the work at CSUSM and preparing the workforce for CSUSM. And I know that it connects to mindfulness. So I'd like to offer, Ranjita, you the opportunity to connect the mindfulness with empathy, with honest feedback, with communication.
Thank you. All of this has been fascinating, and I was just telling Lucy earlier that part of me was just looking forward to not thinking too much ahead of the panel and just kind of going with what's here and responding to what I'm hearing. And so I think that that's where mindfulness can be really effective, is because it allows you to trust what you already know and what you are bringing to the conversation, and being able to listen really, really deeply to each other with the intent of learning something new. And so, and in the process of doing that, that's where that feedback comes in, right? Because if you are listening with the intent of learning something new, then there'll still be resistance, like you said, because somebody might say something that you don't want to hear. But that is where the most learning is likely to occur, is at those learning edges where it's something you don't want to hear, or there's something that is somehow shifting your way of looking at the world, right? And so that is where I think mindfulness allows you to approach each moment with that openness of possibility and saying that it's okay, I don't have to judge it right now. I can suspend my judgment and just simply open my heart and my mind to what's here and what I might learn from it, and also what I might contribute to it. And so now being able to connect these, so I think that's really important for communication, like you said, right? So that we are not only listening for what we want to hear, but we are listening for just whatever is present at that moment. And then also coming back to the empathy, I will make a distinction, because in mindfulness, our focus is more on compassion versus empathy. So empathy is that first step of being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? And being able to see the world from their perspective. And then compassion takes it a little bit further by saying that now I want to do something about relieving the suffering or the distress that we're seeing in the world. And so that action part that comes from that. And so, so I think with mindfulness, that is sort of the intent. And I was going to go back to the intention. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you listening? Why are you, contributing, or why are you participating? And with the mindfulness lens, that intent is always going to be so that you can reduce suffering, you can reduce distress, so that everyone can thrive without exception. And I think that's the other part about compassion, is that there is nobody who's excluded from it. So you're not going to say, I only have compassion for these 3 people, but not for those 4, because they look different from me, or they speak a different language from me, or they come from a different culture from me, right? And so the compassion is saying everyone is included. And I think that that's where artistically, imagination-wise, all of those, you're going to grow, and you're open to that, to just being able to listen to people who might be very different from you. Did that answer? Yeah?
Yeah. Do either one of you want to respond?
So just a couple things to pick up on the mindfulness piece. So I think the great thing about getting older, is like you realize that you're just a constantly learning being, and it's great because it's just every day is an opportunity to become a better human. And when I was in the military, so I started off as a cadet at West Point in the late 80s, and there weren't many women there at all. We were about 9% women. Women had just joined the military academy 10 years before I got there, and there were still a lot of guys who didn't want women there. And so it was really, really hard, and it very much, I very much felt like I was a very small minority. And so what happens is, you end up having to, feel like you are tougher than, stronger than, faster than, better than the guys to be able to be successful.
Yes, to be clear.
And but what it does, frankly, is it made me, for a good portion of my life, to sort of almost, when I was in combat, you have to wear this sort of bulletproof armor wear, but it's like you go through your life like that. And at a certain point, probably after I got out of the military, I realized that was not a good thing. And it was not a good thing for me personally or professionally in terms of how I was able to lead. Because really, to build great teams, you have to build trust. And to build trust, you have to be willing to be authentic and vulnerable. And a lot of it is creating relationships by being present. And so, I came to mindfulness pretty late in my lifetime, in my career, certainly. And what really reinforced it is when I got to CSUSM, and this was shortly after COVID. It was, summer of 2021, and COVID was still going on. But, and I had a lot of people that came to me and said how overwhelmed, how stressed they were. And we dedicated all of 2022 to the year of mental health and well-being. And that's not something that the government talks about a lot, like, mental health. There's always this sort of stigma around, mental health issues. That's always really bothered me. I lost my little brother to suicide. And so it's made me very, very attuned, both for being empathetic to people, and I love your point about compassion. Being a good listener. I loved your point about, listening not just to respond, but listening to learn something. And so one of the things we did was we made Headspace, the mindfulness app, free for all of our employees, just so, you could actually step back, take that time. And I had so many of our teammates say how useful that was for them, how it helped with their sleep. It helped with their moods. And so, again, when we were all coming up, no one was talking about mindfulness, right? And it really is, it's a gift to have that now, to be able to push back from a very stressful job, and to be able to use tools like that to center oneself, and to get that sort of presence, and to also be a better leader and better teammate. So I love what you said.
And Jen, I know from our previous discussions, you use playing guitar as a way to step back and.
Yeah, I mean, this job can be very stressful, as one could imagine. And there's always some craziness going on. So I used to, when I was in the military, I was a big athlete. I used to work out twice a day, and I jumped out of airplanes for a long time. And so now.
We did too.
Did you? Yeah. Fantastic. So really, how many? No, okay, no, sorry. So my body got a little broken, and then I had I was telling somebody earlier that I had this ice skating accident with my son, and so I don't really run anymore, and so I needed something else, and I've always loved guitar. I played acoustic when I was growing up, but then my son wanted an electric, and so we got him an electric guitar. He got so good at it. I was like, oh, I'm getting one of those. So, I got it a couple years ago, and then, when Lisa came, she was playing, and she introduced me to her guitar teacher, who's now my guitar teacher, who's awesome. And it's just, I keep it in my office. Just so instead of going to email or text or social media, I'll just sit down and kind of practice. And it really, it makes me feel better, right? So yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, I just love it. So we're running out of time. So I'm going to invite Jackie up just to say a couple of words, and then we're going to play some music for everybody. All right. I basically set Jackie up to say, okay, so we hear all this. What does it actually mean for?
So I was taking some notes from this just on things that people said, and one of those comments that I found that didn't quite come across clearly for me is just how much. That's a weird situation. So how much empathy and compassion you need to have for each other in this field, because if you don't get something right, boy, it's a big consequence. Mm-hmm. And so just knowing that everybody's doing the best that they can, and really setting everybody up for kind of understanding that they're a team is a big part of it. I took from this just that the arts are part of all of us, and that we don't want to check our creativity, our imagination at the door when we come to work as scientists, and that as people who are not the scientists on the team, that we don't want to assume that the scientists know how to communicate all of these things, that they're kind of at the point of understanding, that they get lost in the details, and they get kind of just so passionate about something that communicating out where they are with that is not the easiest thing for them. And so the fact that there is a team involved is something that we work on a lot in our college, that you need to know how to be a leader, but you also need to know how to be a follower and how to be a member of a team in a way that builds up everybody's strengths and really recognizes everybody's strengths. Some of the things I thought is just that we really approach a lot of cybersecurity as a game in our disciplines, where it's us against them, and we're approaching it that way. And then others are approaching it as kind of a psychology experiment, and still others are as a business imperative or a military necessity. Just the challenges are not just in coding. It's in all of those different realms of what we think about on a daily basis. And I think that's what we saw up here, is that there's a lot going on in this world, and we have to be ready for all of it. So it's going to take a big team to do that.
Hey, thanks, Jackie. All right. And also, we should have like mandatory art classes for every cybersecurity student, right? All right, so I want to, first of all, thank the panelists. Super duper, way cool. I'm going to invite Aaron and Qingming. I think you're still here. You can play on the klezmer tune. So and Aaron Humble is one of our music professors, our choral director. By the way, how many of you are military or have served in the military here? Because we have a lot of vets on campus. Not too many in this audience. All right. So we're going to do 3 tunes. The first one is written by Lisa. Well, actually, kind of Bob Dylan and Lisa. That's a
Collaborated.
A collaborator.
He's a bud.
Yeah, he was.
So we were talking about engaging different kinds of people in cybersecurity, making sure that the message gets out in creative ways. So I wrote this little. I rewrote the lyrics to a Bob Dylan song to get across the importance of installing software updates, which is very important. When you get those notifications, you should download them immediately. So if you remember nothing else from this entire day, please remember that.
Can I ask, do you know why you update your software? Say that again? Well done. Smart group.
Smart group. Okay, so you can sing along at any point to this tune if you recognize it. And thanks to Aaron and Meryl for joining in. Now come gather around people who carry the phone and admit that when updates are offered, you groan. You click, ask later. I'm so in the zone. If your time to you is worth saving, you better click yes, patch the holes that are known for the bugs. They are changing. those patches before you get hacked. Or millions across our great nation could lose all control of their personal fight for the votes they are changing. Now come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't be a weak link, the security flaw. It's just a quick click and voila, it's installed. Look, it'll be good for campaigning. You won't come across as a Neanderthal for the votes they are changing. Hit it, Meryl. Now come mothers and fathers throughout the land. I know cyber seems tricky to understand. Your sons and your daughters can lend you a hand to help you automate it. You won't have to think twice once you click the command for the bugs. They are changing. Everybody sing. For the bugs, they are changing.
All right, we're going to play a little klezmer tune.
We're gonna fly into Meryl's world for a moment.
This is we'll start just with a little doina thing. Okay, here we go. All right, you ready? Ready. All right. to find? Want to give
Has anyone seen Barbie? Yes. Okay, this is the Barbie song.
Really have to sing along. Very important.
Music 250 students, your attendance is announcements on Canvas. Just so you're clear, don't miss the attendance. Sorry.
Don't miss the attendance.
Forgot.
Okay.
All right, I'll actually sing along on
Are
this.
all
I'm going to
the-
play a little bit of the, I'll play the phone on this too.
We're just asking you to sing on the chorus, folks, so don't get too nervous. The verses are a little bit hard on this one.
Unless you want to. Okay.
Ready.
Is this sound? Everyone can hear everything?
Yeah,
All set? Yep. Okay. I'm trying to tell you something about my life. Maybe give me insight between black and white. But the best thing you've ever done for me is to help me take my Everybody.
Woo! Yeah. Jenny Shirley, Lisa Einstein, Aaron Humboldt, Ching Ming played piano. I'm Meryl Goldberg. I feel like it really is a concert now. Thank you so much, everybody, for this. At 1:30, we're doing the fireside chat when we're going to talk more about how CISA is communicating, how to keep your world secure. So join us down in the Innovation Lab at 1:30 if you would like. And thanks again, everybody, Lucy and Ranjita for being on the panel. And all right, thank you.
Awesome.
You
Thanks,
are
everybody.
dismissed.